Imagine waking up and having no idea if it's been 10 minutes or 10 hours since you fell asleep. No dread, no confusion even, because dread and confusion both require a sense of time passing, and yours is simply gone. You check a clock, and the numbers mean nothing anymore, just shapes with no weight behind them. This isn't a thought experiment about a broken watch. This is what happens when the part of your brain responsible for tracking time actually stops working, and the real cases of people who've lived this way reveal something unsettling about how fragile your entire experience of reality actually is. Here's the strange part most people never think about. You don't have a single sense for time the way you have a sense for sight or sound. There's no time organ. Instead, your brain builds your entire experience of time by stitching together several different systems, and when even one of those systems breaks, the whole experience can collapse in bizarre, specific ways. Let's start with the most famous real case. In 1985, a British musicologist named Clive Wearing contracted a severe brain infection called herpes encephalitis, which destroyed large portions of his hippocampus, the brain region critical for forming new memories. The damage left him with a memory span of roughly 7 to 30 seconds. Not minutes, seconds. For Clive, every waking moment felt like the very first moment of consciousness he had ever experienced. His wife, Deborah, has described visiting him and watching him greet her with overwhelming joy, as if she'd just returned from years away, only for him to greet her again minutes later with that exact same explosive joy, having no memory that she'd ever left the room. Neuroscientists studying Clive's case, particularly researcher Barbara Wilson, who worked with him for decades, found something remarkable. Clive could still play the piano beautifully, flawlessly even, despite having no memory of ever learning music or ever having played a note before. This revealed something crucial about how your brain handles time. Explicit memory, the kind that lets you consciously recall what happened yesterday, is completely separate from procedural memory, the kind stored in your muscles and reflexes. Clive lost his timeline entirely, but his hands still remembered the shape of decades of practice, even while his mind insisted each moment was his very first. So what does this tell us about what would happen if this spread to everyone? If somehow an entire population lost the hippocampus's ability to string moments together? Here's where it gets genuinely disturbing. Without a working hippocampus laying down new memories in sequence, you wouldn't just forget what happened an hour ago. You'd lose your ability to build what psychologists call a mental timeline, the internal thread that lets you understand that breakfast came before lunch, that yesterday came before today, that your life has a beginning that leads somewhere. Neuroscientist Endel Tulving, who spent much of his career studying memory, described this specific kind of consciousness, awareness of yourself moving through time, as autonoetic consciousness, essentially the mental time travel that lets humans mentally revisit the past and imagine the future. Without it, you wouldn't just lose memories, you'd lose the entire concept of a personal story. There would be no character arc to your life, just an endless, isolated present, over and over, forever. Here's the twist that makes this even stranger. You'd assume losing your sense of time would feel like panic, an unbearable, disorienting horror. But Clive Wearing's case suggests something almost the opposite. In his diary, which he kept obsessively during his lucid moments, Clive wrote the same entry again and again, sometimes minutes apart. Entries like, "Now I am really completely awake," followed shortly after by an identical entry crossing out the previous one and insisting that this new moment was the true first moment of consciousness. He wasn't distressed by each reset. He experienced pure, genuine astonishment each time, as if reality itself kept restarting fresh and clean. Researchers studying his case describe this less as suffering and more as an endless, involuntary state of profound present-moment awakening, something disturbingly close to what meditation traditions spend years trying to deliberately achieve. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If your sense of time disappeared entirely, would you actually be miserable, or would you simply become a different kind of creature altogether, one incapable of dread precisely because dread requires imagining a future you can no longer picture? Think about how much of your daily suffering depends entirely on your intact sense of time. Anxiety about a meeting tomorrow, regret about something you said last year, the slow-burning dull ache of counting down days until a deadline. All of it requires a functioning mental timeline stretching both backward and forward. Without one, you couldn't dread the future, because you wouldn't be able to construct one in your mind at all. You also couldn't savor anticipation, the excitement of a trip next month, the countdown to seeing someone you love. Both pain and pleasure that depend on time would simply vanish, replaced by something psychologists still struggle to fully describe, an existence made entirely of isolated, disconnected nows. Clive Wearing died in 2020, having lived for 35 years inside what researchers called the tightest span of amnesia ever recorded. And yet, throughout those 35 years, by every account from people who knew him, he remained recognizably, unmistakably himself. His personality, his humor, his deep love for his wife, All of it survived completely intact, untouched by the collapse of his timeline, which suggests something strange and oddly comforting. Whatever makes you, you might not actually live in your memories at all. It might live somewhere time can't reach. So what if you lost your sense of time? Based on the only human beings who've ever actually lived this exact nightmare, the answer isn't horror. It's something closer to permanent, involuntary wonder, an existence with no past pressing down on you and no future looming ahead. Just an endless blinking series of first moments, each one impossibly feeling brand new.